Welcome, everybody. It's a pleasure to see all of you. It is now 5 o'clock, and much like I did when I was in high school punk rock bands, I start right on time. So buckle up. Just before we begin, a few housekeeping issues. If we need to leave this space quickly, just leave the same way that you entered. The bathrooms are located over there. Please feel free to use the bathroom in the appropriate location, not in this very nice space donated by co-library. After the presentation, we'll have time for your questions. We encourage you to stay for a dialogue with Mr. Sprague. If you're interested in volunteering to help the Custer Street Project organize events like this in the future, please put a little star next to your name on the sign-in sheet, and we'll be in touch with you. We would be really happy to have more folks joining in on this effort. I'd like to take a moment to thank all of those who've made this event possible. First and foremost, we are incredibly grateful to Donovin Sprague for coming down to Laramie to share his expertise and knowledge with the community. We're also thankful for Melanie Vigil, who is here representing the Laramie Human Rights Commission, and I'll invite her up in a minute to give up some words. Today's event is co-sponsored and generously funded by the Wyoming Institute for Humanities Research and the University of Wyoming's Department of Criminal Justice and Sociology. Special thanks also goes out to Co-Library for providing this wonderful space. And then finally, I'd like to give a big thank you to all the members of the Custer Street Group for their labor of love that is the emergence of this community project. So Melanie, if you don't mind coming up, Melanie is representing the Laramie Human Rights Commission to open up this meeting and say a few words.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. This, the Custer Street Project is such an important one. And it was really great because a few months ago, the Laramie Human Rights and Relations Commission was able to hear from some representatives of the group. And I think we left that meeting just feeling really inspired. I think it's always so impactful when a group of community members can come together to do something good. And so we need more of that. And so thank you for doing what you do. I serve on our Laramie City Council. I represent Ward 2, and I started just this past January. I was elected last November. And so a year has almost gone by, and it's gone by really, really fast. And so if you didn't already know, all of our city council members, there are 9 of us. We all serve on various boards, commissions, et cetera, throughout the city of Laramie. So that includes things like, Laramie Town Gown Association, Albany County Transportation Authority, and for me, the Laramie Human Rights and Relations Commission. And so this commission was commissioned a year ago, last April. And so it's kind of still in its infancy. And so our city council appoints 7 members for a certain tenure. It's about 2 years, I believe. And we are still kind of getting off the ground. We actually have a couple of vacancies right now and some really great candidates. So it's going to be my job here in the next week or two to kind of fill those positions. And so the commission meets quarterly every first Wednesday at 5:30 in council chambers. I think we could be meeting more because I think there's so much that we could be doing in the city of Laramie as it relates to cultural awareness, to community understanding, mutual respect, all of the things that are listed out in kind of the commission's charge. And so we're kind of working on a few different ideas, but one thing that I would say is that we're always open to more. So again, the Custer Street Project came and presented to us a while back, and we would like more folks to come and present on the work that they're doing and how the commission can kind of elevate those voices. And I think we have a lot of work ahead of us, just, what we're seeing in kind of the national news, statewide news, even local. I really want the commission to be able to serve as a voice and elevate others in our community. And so I think we have a lot, as I said, a lot of work ahead of us, but it's always worth it. And if you were not involved in any City of Laramie happenings or any of our boards and commissions, what I would say is that we always have openings somewhere. I know the Disability Commission just filled a few vacancies. I know that there's some listed on our City of Laramie website. So if you feel so inclined in all of your free time, head over to the website and kind of see what's available in that regard. And so I just wanted to kind of put our name and face out there as the Human Rights Commission, know that we exist, know that we're passionate folks, and we're looking to make a difference here in the city of Laramie, and elevate voices of communities that might not always be as elevated. And so thank you for having me tonight, and I look forward to the talk with Donovin Sprague. Thanks so much.
So just a little bit of context about this, the idea behind these events. By the way, I'm Dan Auerbach. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Criminal Justice and Sociology. And many of us who have joined this group have lived near or cross many streets that are named after people who have participated in the extirpation and the erasure of Indigenous peoples. I personally drive in on Harney Street every single day to come to campus, of course, named after General William S. Harney. Many folks in this group live on or near Custer Street. When I first moved here, I lived on Fetterman, so apparently it just follows me around, or I follow it around. But it caused us, as we interact with these streets, it caused us to reflect on what this means in terms of how community or what are our community's values. As place names provide a glimpse into the layered histories and the meanings of places, they're much more than words on a sign. Rather, they can be understood as cultural symbols that embody community values. Place is part of where we develop awareness of the world and are sites where we construct individual and community identities. Many of us who have joined this group have begun to ask questions of what it means for us as individuals and what it means for the community of Laramie to have streets named after certain historical figures. It's based off of this curiosity that the Custer Street Project was created, and events like History on Every Corner, of which this is the second event, are being put on. It is my distinct pleasure to bring up a speaker, Donovin Sprague, giving a talk titled American Indian Heritage and Contributions, Recognizing the Need for Place Name Change. And I want to provide a nice introduction, so buckle in because this man is accomplished. Mr. Donovin Sprague, born and raised in Dupree, South Dakota on the Cheyenne River Sioux Reservation, Donovin is an enrolled member of the Minikuju Lakota and is a history faculty member at the Sheridan College in Wyoming, where he's also an advisor for the Native American students. He's a bit of a Renaissance man. He's a tour guide. He's an author of 10 historical books. He's a historian. He's an artist. He's a musician. He's a consultant. Donovin's historical research and written captions are featured at the National Museum of the American Indian George Gustav Hay Center in New York City, including the permanent exhibit Infinity of Nations. He is a consultant and tribal historian for the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe in South Dakota and is an expert historical witness for the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe in U.S. federal courts. Donovin has given presentations at many universities, museums, and cultural centers in the United States, Canada, and Europe, including being the keynote speaker for the 150th anniversary of the Fetterman Fight in 2016, the 150th anniversary of the Wagon Box Fight in 2017, and the 150th anniversary of the Treaty of Fort Laramie Education Symposium in 2018. He has appeared in Time Magazine, The New Yorker, National Geographic, and The Wall Street Journal. In addition to his work as a historian, Donovin is also an accomplished artist and art instructor. He has been an instructor for beadwork, quill work, feather work, and tanning and hide work at Black Hill State University, Oglala Lakota College, and Sheridan College. He is also an award-winning maker of flutes and archery bows, as well as being an accomplished, is it flautist? Is that how we say a flute player? Yeah. With all that said, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome up Donovin Sprague.
Thank you there very much for the nice introduction there, and really pleased to see everybody here. Great turnout. I know there's always a lot of things going on campus. I used to schedule activities myself, and it don't matter what day you pick, there's always many other things going on. And I got my exercise too. I haven't been on large campuses for a while, but I used to be on the Berkeley campus and University of Texas, Austin, and some other, 80,000 enrollment stuff, like traffic lights at each place. So what I wanted to do, I'm real interested in the group and their, efforts to try to explain, why things need to be different or changed and things like that. And since it's American Indian Heritage Month, I wanted to say Happy American Indian Day, month, year. We live it every day. But so I want to share some history and some things about our community, our band, and set the stage for that. And then probably go into some contemporary role models, I would call them, who are American Indian and what they've done. And also Veterans Day, Happy Veterans Day. It's a really important event, and I really like the celebration of American Indian Heritage Month in November because we have Veterans Day. And I have a statistic there. 50% of American Indians are veterans of US wars. And there isn't any ethnic group in America that comes close to that statistic. And I was telling the group about this. I tell that and show statistics for many years, that same line, and US bases in Germany and Fort Knox and the Department of Defense, and talking to our warriors, who are men and women today, soldiers. And, it's just really, if you keep it up, you'll hear it back, because about, just recently in the last few years, I heard it on the radio. It was driving somewhere far away, and I thought I was on the radio. It was the President of the United States. He said the very same word for word what I just said with the stats, 50%, and that I'm always a believer in you work at something long enough, and a believer in hard work, and something good will come out of that. And the experiences I've had in call it name changes and stuff like that, so I can also share some of that. And it's been it's been a struggle at times. Sometimes it was very easy. There's different avenues, to take with that. One thing that the group that we were talking to, I think a really valuable place would be to air some of that and I don't know the timing of that as far as your group, that's up to you, but it might be something to look at, is look at American Indian media, because in the events that I worked in, that was very out there, publicity. There's groups called Native America Calling. I'm very familiar with them. In fact, I could have picked up the phone today and they could maybe broadcast some of this, as well as American Indian newspapers. I worked with Tim Gallego back in the days of the Lakota Times newspaper, the largest Native American weekly. And I was also general manager of a radio station, American Indian radio station on Pine Ridge, 100,000 watts. And there's power in the media. And so it'd be like, at what stage would the group like to prepare something like, hey, this is what we're trying to do. What would really be nice is the end result, a positive end result, where they cover that and they say, these are the efforts they did, and this is the reason they wanted to make this change. And it happened. That's why we're reporting today, is that it happened. Yay, celebration. So you see, there's different areas there. And then you get another side, which is very, I found, kind of stubborn, and that really goes into alumni a lot. Worked a lot with mascots and schools and things like that. And I was over at the Iowa universities. I was worked for the Iowa Regents, where I was a coordinator for American Indian programs there, University of Iowa, Iowa State, University of Northern Iowa. And while I was over there, Chief Illini was a big thing, you know, and eventually it all come from the students, you know, that's where this movement builds from. And eventually we banned Chief Illini as a mascot, at least with Iowa, University of Iowa, Big Ten Conference. And they would not help write the resolution thing and for the Big Ten Conference. It was that they would not schedule any games with a team that brings in a mascot or dress, dance, portrayal of American Indian people, and you know where it's not authentic. So anyway, that went on for quite a few years, and Lion Iwick still did his thing, you know, in his state of Illinois, but he couldn't come to Iowa City no more. We weren't worried about that. And ironically, the one of the people that's really concerned, I would say Iowa is a very politically correct state. They like to do things and be abreast on the current issues and changes if needed, and debate and hearing and all that. But one of the groups that I remember, they didn't know too much about it, but a lot of the stuff came in the sports section. They were telling me, hey, have you looked at the Des Moines Register? And here it was, all this stuff was about. They didn't know about this Chief Lion Iwick, if it was good thing or bad thing. You know, this could really be detrimental. And it had nothing to do with culture or stereotypes. And the whole lowdown there was the sports people were afraid that it might jeopardize Iowa in a bowl game or something. See, that they didn't play them that season, you know, and that could have happened. And so anyway, that was their concern. So, but that went away. And then there's other cases I could refer to that must have took 20 years. That's some of the longer ones. And that's the street change things. I can share some things on that too. And those were relatively easy and simple, going through the city and planning, all that. The ones that were more difficult were, you know, and you know, that hits home with everybody. Your school, what, they're gonna change the name of my school? You know, it was good enough for my kids. It's gonna be good. It's good enough for me, you know. And a lot of times it's not so much the name always, it's what you do with your entertainment along with that. Just like, say, as an example, Atlanta Braves, you know, Braves in itself, you know, that could be a strong thing. But then when you get the chop going and, you know, and all this stuff, you know, that it just compounds all of that. So I want to give you some background on some of our history here of some of our people. And after the Sand Creek, so I'm Minnekoju on my father's side. I'm from the Hump and Crazy Horse families. And High Backbone, my Lakota name is Chinkahu Kantia. It translates to high backbone. And that's they explained that's the buffalo hump. And I think it was General Miles who kind of started slanging it to Chief Hump when he's looking for them. And so then on all of our men of the Minnekoju and their family married Cheyenne. So I'm part Cheyenne. All the women were Cheyenne. And on our side, it goes into Morning Star, also known as Dull Knife, who was a leader. So these are headmen names, and you don't get a name like Chinkahu Kantia just because it's time to have a name. It's those that you have to earn over many years and through work and proving yourself and things like that. So these people would be in all the books on, like, the famous Crazy Horse. He's probably the best known of these. And so with the Sand Creek massacre, that's when a lot of the alliances happened with Lakota and Cheyenne. There was also, Arapaho there, but this is one of the big first engagements that happened. And if you can picture, say, like the Bozeman Trail and just moving right up, say, I-25, right up towards Montana, right up where I come from, Sheridan. All these things happened just bang, bang, right up after that. The first things that happened when our family went down to retaliate on Sand Creek were actually Julesburg. There was a lot of in northeast Colorado cutting telegraph lines and disrupting travel and things like that. And then one of the other early things that happened after that was the Battle of Platte Bridge, also known as then the same day the Battle of Red Buttes. So we got a Spur Award. If you want to watch a movie on YouTube, it's called the Battle of Red Buttes a couple of years ago, and those events that happened. And so what happened was with Lakota, with our people, like it's like in Wyoming, like state of Wyoming anyway, it's like, well, officially there's Wind River Indian Reservation and there's a couple tribes over there. But hey, we kind of went out the back door with all of our reservations in South Dakota and then North Dakota as well, overlapping there. And everybody underestimates the size of what people call the Sioux, which is Lakota, Dakota, Nakota correctly, or the Ocheti Shakawee, the 7 council fires. Huge populations compared to all neighboring tribes like in this area, Shoshone, Arapaho, Crow, Cheyenne, large numbers. I mean, we had stuff going on in Nebraska, in Minnesota, the Dakotas, in both Dakotas. But by the 1850s, all this is back with winter counts too. I have winter counts of our own family that nobody has seen, and I use that for my sources in an unpublished book called High Backbone, Hump, and Crazy Horse, a Lakota Cheyenne history from a family view. Universities like, okay, what book did that come out of? Well, okay, we didn't have books. So I went through all that. Okay, a winter count, the most important event of the year. Here it is right here. And so my footnote, oh, okay, we get it. So those were very valuable, and these were some of these events were recorded in there. So in this here, so the alliance between us and the Cheyenne and Lakota, for our family, the move took place about 1850s, and the most frequent place for the camps were on the Tongue River, and that was up from about Miles City, Montana, down to Dayton, Wyoming. So all along there, that's where they frequented, and they had to keep Lakota anyway had to keep pressure on our Salaka, the Crow, or we call them Kongi, the Crow, because our winter counts show, okay, now they're down in the Black Hills. What? That's like our back door home. They can't be down here, battling, and so to keep them up this way, we had to put that pressure on up there, and that was about where the line was. So from there, an alliance to move down here to all of this activity. So Julesburg, the main Julesburg battle, they were still traveling. They got in on some of the later Julesburg stuff, but they were headmen at this. They come down, they were camped over in the KC area, west of KC, kind of that hole in the wall area. And as they came down pretty much where the interstate like area is, George Bent was married into the Cheyenne. And so he got some of this witnessed, and he got it down. And I think it was somewhere around 900 or 1,000 people he recorded, and were in this band of Hump and Crazy Horse. And they were picking out the decoys, headmen decoys, of which Crazy Horse was the expert at luring soldiers out from the fort with his feats of horsemanship. Now he's from a non-headman family, but rose to one of the greatest just through his feats. And so and his age also, he was young at that time. So that's his part of his job, is to be head of the decoys. To they talk about them even at the fort. There's records, they appeared on the north side there, over where that I was just by that event center today, and the interpretive trails. I do some stuff up there, and that's where they appeared. And the decoy thing didn't really work. They didn't follow them out, but anyway, through a series of events, the Battle of Red Buttes happened there, and it was all on this bridge. Is Fort Casper today is the location down there, rebuilt. And of course, Casper Collins was killed in this engagement. Casper is named for, it's misspelled, C-S-P-A-R was his name. And his horse actually stampeded right into our family group there, and uncontrolled. I mean, very embarrassing. But anyway, these are some of the today pictures here. So I'll go through some of these events here. Now, this would be the next big thing up at Fort Phil Kearney, by south of between Buffalo and Sheridan. Now, the event that really happened just exactly, well, right after Platte Bridge, we jumped clear up to Ranchester, to the Connor fight. Connor came in to Ranchester City Park, there where that is, and attacked unsuspecting Arapaho who didn't do anything, and then he goes on, and then Sawyer Road Building Group comes in right after, and they attacked Sawyer. So that's only a month after Casper. But this is on the solstice, December 21st, 1866. Again, the planning for this from the Hump and Crazy Horse families took place up in the Wolf Mountains, where Lodge Grass is. A council was held there, and they came down. They're on the Tongue River again, and then over to Sheridan, or just right along the Bighorns Story, and then into this where Fetterman was not supposed to, supposedly not supposed to go over Lodge Trail Ridge. Crazy Horse is one of the decoys. Some of the stories, he was clear under his horse, and the men didn't use saddles, and luring, the soldiers going further and further and further, and finally lured over where Hump and other headmen, they just raised their staffs over there on the other side, and all their warriors move into place. So we have a whole story on that, and that's another case where the U.S. side does not know what happened over on the other side of that hill. We hold that information, just like with, I'll get into Custer at Little Bighorn. Okay, same story, because no survivors. But anyway, a winter count here of the events recorded. I believe this one, well, this is a new one that was found, a Lakota war record. That was events that happened that they think around Fort Phil Kearney, and it would be the oldest ones. I think it would predate by a year to the Bad Heart Bull drawings by Amos Bad Heart Bull. Those are over at the Peabody, and I had to go over there finally. It was up on the main floor for about 8 years of the display at Harvard. And so the Castle McLaughlin, the author, researched it and thought that there were about 5 artists who did these through this book, A, B, C, D, E artists, and that one of them was my grandfather, and that Crazy Horse is also represented there. So the Fetterman was the biggest disaster in the West there at that time, until the Little Bighorn battle overshadowed that 10 years later. This is the marker there. I was just here this week with my students, field trip. That's what's awesome about being in areas where you're students can just go out, we can read it in the book, but it's always more power of place, really sets that in. So anyway, all these soldiers perished. And so the next event that come up, again, planning over in the Lodge Grass area. And now we're going to do day to day, back to back, August 1st, August 2nd, hayfield fight at the Fort C.F. Smith. So the three forts that were established were Fort Reno over east of KC, and then Fort Phil Kearny by Story, and then Fort C.F. Smith. Those were the three forts over north of Dayton and just into Montana. So that's what all of this map is here. Hayfield fight. So they decided to go in there and, hayfield fight. Horses need hay. Soldiers go out from the fort, getting hay, fight. Okay, hayfield fight. Same way with wagon box the next day. They need wood. They're building the fort and hauling wood, take the boxes off and jump in the boxes if the attack comes, and that was what happened at those. So back-to-back dates, and Hump and Crazy Horse were at this one. Nobody who was at one day was at the other one because of the distance. And this is that site over there by Story. So on this time, a few soldiers held off Benny warriors. They had the conversion repeating arms introduced for the first time, and soldiers, few of them held off. This is kind of like the Hollywood depiction, almost like happened right here. And then up in these hills, just these foothills, our families were up in there. Hump's wives were up there, and a lot of the women were cheering the men on, and they just could not penetrate that. So those were major events that were happening. And as a result of all of that heat, that what's shown there, it was time the government to have the treaty. And that's typical across the whole United States. They start, the natives start looking too good, and it's time to sit down and have a talk. Treaty. We're getting kicked pretty bad here. And the three forts then would be burned, as I mentioned. They would retreat. And I seen some stats where it wasn't feasible to maintain them. Well, yeah, it's hard to maintain when they're burned to the ground. So that moved all of the soldiers out temporarily for that time period. And then the treaty itself, that's a whole evening discussion there, but it's a very important document. But all of these things is what led up to that. This is one of our family here, Lonehorn, over at Fort Laramie. And when I mentioned the 150th anniversary, they did a really cool poster. Jim Yellowhawk and the poster, he's an artist, and all the signers and their pictures were on the outside, and they got to thinking, now, where's your grandfather? I didn't see his name on there. I said, you won't find their name. You won't find no Hump and no Crazy Horse. They came up to the Dayton area on two different occasions, and it was recorded. People like Frank Garrard, the scout, and they said, look at the wonderful things we're getting, from the government, and come on in, come on in with this. Nope. So no signing there. So I am proud of that. I'm aware of, the great importance of the 68 treaty and all of our provisions of health, housing, and, our whole life. But at the same time, these were men who didn't want to give up 1 inch of ground or concede anything, and that's the way they were. This is also this group here too, and talking about, I was driving along, there's Harney Street and all that, and they're in here, Sherman and Sheridan and all that. And I did bring a book along and I hate to even get it out. I read about half of it and stopped, but it's The Girl in the Middle. Man, Harney is such a bad man, and he is even accused of killing his own wife. was in court for that, you know. But we changed in South Dakota, Harney Peak to Blackout Peak for our medicine man. So anyway, the treaty, that's very, very important document. Little pictures there is kind of an oasis and travelers. Casper too, really the crossroads of all of this. So then we have gold. Yep, Custer in gold, and the expedition from Fort Abraham Lincoln, North Dakota, and corporate interest. This NPRR stands for Northern Pacific Railroad on the tent. A lot of corporate, you know, backing with that. Gold is found, the Black Hills is wanted, the treaty is violated, and that's a whole another part. And then the next thing major leading up to the Battle of Little Bighorn, battle where sister saved her brother. And that's my title in the book. That's how the Cheyenne remember that. And this is the grounds right here where she rode through. She came through in her finest regalia drawn here. And the soldiers are all shooting, and down through the middle she goes, right in the middle. And here she's rescuing her brother. Her brother just jumped on the side of the horse. And so the Cheyenne always remember that as a battle where sister saved her brother. And see brothers right here. See his head sticking out? He's clamped right on the side of the horse. That's how they remembered that. And his arm is over here, and his rifle is right here. And away they went over the hill here where they were protected. And I heard there was a lot of high-fiving going on there too. They made it. They made it. Yeah. And so it's always remembered as the battle where sister saved her brother, leading up to the Little Bighorn. See, this is days before. This is June 17th. Crook comes out of Sheridan. That's his camp. And they have to retreat, go back to Sheridan. And then meanwhile, he's supposed to meet Custer and the whole group, the contingent, where he doesn't appear, you know. He's got a diary too. Did you know that? What's he doing in Sheridan? He's over at Bighorn while Custer's getting killed that day. He's supposed to be up there. He's fishing. Wow, the fishing is just great here. And that's what you'll find in his diary. Whoops. I don't think anybody did a book on that yet. So the little Bighorn, the greasy grass, we have a lot of stories with that. So next year, here's the important thing, is the 150th anniversary of the battle itself, you know. And I was there as a speaker 25 years ago at the 125th. Stood next to people like Joe Medicine Crow. And I can't believe it's 25 years has passed, you know. But the new visitor center is coming in, built. And that's a really important part for the group here, because there was a lot of work to get the Custer Battlefield changed, the name Custer Battlefield to Little Bighorn National Monument. That happened in 1991, and it took a lot of time and work, a lot of presentations like this. Well, this is what we did. Yeah, we were there. Well, okay, yeah, well, we respect you. That's great. You know, we earned that respect, and your ancestors believed in this and that, and that's part of the purpose of this story. One of our tribal members, Colleen Cutshaw, won the contest right here. This is the new American Indian Memorial that's right up there by the Custer Hill where the mass grave is. And the names are in there, but Colleen won this design here, was chosen. So we had a big gathering for that. This is in the Little Bighorn Museum, which is now gone. And this is my grandfather right here. This is Hump, great-great-grandfather. I have, I think, a full one here. It's a Huffman photo. And I have even some color that was added to it just recently. Nobody's hardly seen that yet. But that's where he would go in. I guess they call it a surrender. Nobody marches them in or anything, but they come in. But he chose we'll get to that, but he chose the Tongue River Cantonment. That's Miles City. So he surrendered to Miles. Look at General Miles's his book from long ago. Who does he say the greatest warrior that he ever worked with or was around? And by the way, Geronimo surrendered to him too. But Hump, he said, he was the greatest warrior, he said, that he ever faced. And he was also in the kind of like, you know, coerced to be a scout for a while, and was in the Bear Paw battle with they found actually Nez Perce and that, and then they went to Canada. He quit that scouting, went into Canada with Sitting Bull, and then he had another surrender in 1881. So this is that trip out from Fort Abraham Lincoln and out to the battlefield in Crook. See, he's supposed to come up here, come in, and Fort Shaw, Fort Ellis, Gibbons, all them. So this is Hump here, and I like this picture here. That's Crazy Horse, how the Little Bighorn depicted, because there's no proven picture. So it's a drawing. That's cool. This is Gall, PZ, from the Hoot Papa. A lot of books said that Hump and PZ were brothers. Some well-known, respected authors said they were, but it was Hookah, no blood. They made each other brothers in ceremony. Of course, Sitting Bull here in the middle, he's the center of everything. He's a medicine man, and predicted the battle and all that. We're connected to him too. His nephews, One Bull and White Bull. One Bull's a really good resource, and White Bull had a winter count, and you know, he said he killed Custer personally. He told a lot of things, and sometimes it was a little different each time, but it's really overall really some really great stuff to sort out. And but anyway, they surrendered, and White Bull moved to Cherry Creek, which is our home at Cheyenne River, where Hump surrendered in from Canada. Now they're next door neighbors. So some people said, well, why didn't he say something more about Hump? Well, there's a protocol in the American Indian world, you know, of telling other history of the family, and then at some point he's got to come back home to his cabin next door. So he's cautious, you know, with that part of it. Other people, Red Horse here did awesome artwork and drawings of the battle itself. Rain in the Face, Papa. All these are like Low Dog, all these pictures I think are in those books over there. Fine, I have historic photos is what I collect. So great victory there. Nobody will be working on June 25th in Ocheti Shakawee. That's our victory day, our big celebration, Little Bighorn. So Custer is very important, and that's a word that has to be used very, very carefully. For Native American Day, or we say American Indian Day, but vice versa, you might know that South Dakota changed Columbus Day, you know, in the 90s to Native American Day. At the same time, they had two working state holidays the state proclaimed. One was June 25th for that. The other was December 29th. Wounded Knee Massacre. So anyway, those were proclaimed by our then governor, who was Governor George Mickelson. They also proclaimed in 1990 a whole year of reconciliation. A lot of the tribes thought that we're really moving forward with this discussion on things we like to see and changes in names and things like that. And wow, unfortunately, Governor Mickelson died in a plane crash. And with that, they say a lot of that vision and dream went with that. And then the next administration abolished the Office of Indian Affairs. So what does that send? That sends a message. So we have stories on all this, right, where we came in, and I have a chapter on this here naturally. I'll just say one thing here. The our women were over gathering team prairie turnips, and my chapter on that is called The Music of the Bugle, because they heard the bugle and they knew soldiers were there in the camp, and they went screaming to the camp, which is down in this area right here. They call that Minikoju Ford down in there. And then they alerted them. And of course, another big thing that a lot of people don't know is a couple years ago, our tribes bought land on the battlefield itself. So we own land on the south end down on Reno Creek. There's a ranch there. That's where the lone teepee story is. That's where Custer and Reno came in on Reno, and Reno is detailed up to make the attack on the south end. But I gave a history there for our chairman, and just the history just on that end where the property is. So there's a lot of potential there to tell your story, because other tribes tell our story. I go up there and I see there other tribes are telling, the story. One story too, just share. Got a lot of things to talk about, but over on Calhoun Hill, Hump was shot, and his horse jumped high in the air and fell over on him, pinned him. Crazy Horse was one of those that came, and they made a corridor around him to protect him until he got remounted. And the bullet came in. He was riding like this. They had separated the soldiers right there on Calhoun Hill. They went down and then back up, and that was a turning point in the battle. After that, soldiers were a lot of them were running towards the Last Stand Hill monument, and that's where you see a lot of markers are real prolific all through there. But he was shot in the knee, horseback, and it went clear up his leg and exited out his hip. So that he carried that wound there, and his brother accidentally killed famous Cheyenne leader Lame White Man. So some of those events like that happened right within minutes. So I like that book, Lakota Noon, too, by Greg Michno, except some things happen at 3:03 and some things happen at 3:07. I don't know how they got that precise, but anyway, it's a lot of times, but I can establish some really close times with the events that were happening. Of course, we also have the U.S. victory flag in our possession. That's over at Cheyenne River, the U.S. flag. So no nation in the world has that. That's our victory flag. It comes out on certain times. We also have the home of the white buffalo calf pipe. Orville Looking Horse is the 19th generation keeper of the pipe. So anyway, a whole bunch of stories about that. This one here is just trying to surrender at Slim Butte. Some of our people came in to attack later. And Dull Knife fight here over by KC. And then this is a red horse. No, this is a Bad Heart Bull. And this is a full picture of Hump, my great-great-grandfather. He's got a hat band there. Says Hump. Whoops, mine's not as big, but I use this in the battle, Little Bighorn. 2 Cheyenne wives from the Dull Knife family, sisters. This is my great-great-grandmother. There's no picture of the first Hump, his father, and no picture. Crazy Horse, Sitting Bull, Dull Knife, and Touch the Cloud from our family. So that figures into my presentation also, because Touch the Cloud, they didn't know the story about him, like in the recent history. But an artist chose him to be in the parking lot of a big statue, just like the Washakie out here, down at the Houston Astrodome. So anybody been to the old Astrodome out in the parking lot, they honored these chiefs, and it's the way he looked, but as he grew, touched the cloud, he was about 6'10". And we have people, nephews in Kansas, hello, 7'2". We have 7-footers, good basketball teams, every other generation because it skips. But anyway, they didn't know who this guy was. And so I was keynote speaker. It's a lot like this campus here, just like Washakie's over here. Here I pull in there as a campus, and here's Touch the Cloud. I couldn't miss it. It's 30 feet tall and 15 feet wide. And then it says, touch the clouds, huh? So they needed some help, like the community here, they need some help to advise. And so anyway, I said that would be like calling red clouds, but it's important to the family. And he was with Crazy Horse. He's in a lot of the books. When he died, when he was killed, or some say murdered at Camp Robinson at Nebraska. Held and stabbed in the back, and Touch the Cloud was the one who picked him up. His first cousin said he's too honorable to go in that guardhouse and die, and carried him over and put him in the other area. He surrendered at Spotted Tail, which is like Rosebud, but he got permission to come home to Cheyenne River. He joined the group there at Cherry Creek, and he died in I believe 1905, and Hump died 1908. Red Cloud the next year, 1909. So you see, all these people are out, and now the new people are wearing headdresses coming back from Washington, and chief this and chief that, and some of our traditionists, our ladies even said they never was a chief, but. Then, fast forward the IRA government and that kind of stuff. So anyway, Wolf Mountain and the surrenders, then, this is kind of the end part of this part, is Crazy Horse here. This is him depicted. Our surrenders took place up where the Northern Cheyenne are today, up there on Otter Creek, going on 212 east there, and then south. So that's where they found them. It's a tributary, or it's off from the Tongue. So they kept patrolling the Tongue from Miles City to Dayton, but they didn't find them because they were off on that one creek there. So anyway, they come in, Crazy Horse comes in to Camp Robinson, as I said. This was in April and May of 1877, less than a year after the Little Bighorn victory. Second one, Touch the Cloud from our family comes in, and he goes to the Spotted Tail Agency, would evolve to Rosebud Sioux Reservation. That's the Sichongu burnt thigh, or the French then mix it further, brulee, because burnt thigh is brulee in French. So you get bombarded with names. Then Hump, he goes into the Tongue River cantonment to Miles. Dull Knife will eventually end up in Indian Territory, Oklahoma, where he goes into the Nebraska, and that's a whole story of the Cheyenne exodus out of there and back. And the last one was Lame Deer. Lame Deer was killed south of Lame Deer. He's a Minicoju. And they thought he was going to surrender, and he didn't. And Hump was actually credited with saving Miles's life there. Sitting Bull goes to Canada, so he's a free guy. And then Hump will join him. Other people like Rain in the Face and Gall, it's an incredible number of people there. A book I would highly recommend is called the Sitting Bull Surrender Census. And it's the actual census from 1881 of everybody who came in, surrendered from Wood Mountain area, Saskatchewan, Canada, to the South Dakota reservations. They processed them in Fort Yates at Standing Rock and decided who goes where and all that. And by that time, a lot of the Sitting Bull names are just Sitting Bull to sell books, and same with Little Bighorn and Custer. But by that time, Sitting Bull had a very small following, because a lot of others had went in or wanted to go in. He didn't want to come in. So his band is listed in there. I don't have it off the top of my head, but I don't think it was over 100, 150 people, who had the very largest of that whole group of these thousands of surrenders, humps, 714. It's a great genealogical tool. It's man, woman, child, Lakota names, date of birth. See, I found a whole bunch of people in Canada from our reservation. So anyway, that's Fort Laramie Treaty, and then this is what it looks like today. Our reservations are right here. Right here. On Cheyenne River. We'd be pretty big if they hadn't made two here, Standing Rock overlap. So Lakota, anyway, we're all in this area throughout here and into Canada. And then with the reservations, we lost all that, the fort areas. So we've got Ogallala, the 7 council fires. Ogallala's Pine Ridge, right? Oglala. Over here, Sichanggu, Rosebud. Papa, Standing Rock. Medikoju, that's Donovan. Sihasapa, Itazipcho, Uhueanupa. We have 4 at Cheyenne River. So we're having a test over those 7 at the end of the. Oh, well, like my students, I say, Itazipcho, you ain't gonna find anything in the library on that probably. I'll tell you what, look under the Sans Arc, because in the story of their name, they were without their bows at one time. And so the Sans is a French name. Sans is without, and the Arc is the bow. So same way with Sihasapa is Blackfeet, but not to be confused with the large Blackfeet nation, Blackfoot, Blackfeet, Canada, and Montana. And then Uhueanupa Nupa's the word too, is two kettle, man. Wanji, Nupa, Yami, Dopa, Shampe. And then, Ogallala and Sichanggu. So, oh yeah, these are some of my books that are over there. I also was mentioned, The Infinity of Nations is this exhibit in New York City. A lot of my tour people go there and see some of my stuff over there. And they say, well, I kind of know you. I've seen your stuff over there. Now it's little ways from the towers, the monument there. It was a Smithsonian, still affiliated with the Smithsonian. This is at the Peabody. This is that display of the drawings. And then Ogallala history here. Well, it's really Lakota. It's always Ogallala. Even the Smithsonian thought that it was all referred to all our whole nation, as I think Hump's in here more than any that drawn, and he's Minikoju. So a couple of the projects then too, continuing on this Custer thing. So I was invited over to Monroe, Michigan for the Custer Week. They have a big celebration every week where they worship him and all that. And so I was wondering what was going to happen to me when I went over, but they wanted to hear the native side, So, but anyway, it was the most awesome thing, and the people turned out, and the program was in an old historic theater downtown Monroe. That's Custer's adopted hometown where he moved as a youngster. And family are still there. There's some of the Custers are out on the farm there. And there's like a leather shop or boot shop or something on Main Street. And it also premiered they died with their boots on back in the day, the Errol Flynn. But anyway, I was really happy to be there. I spent a whole week over there, and they really treated me like, you know, royalty. And the last day I left, they came in from the farm, and that bow is actually over here in one of these pictures. They presented me with a bow, and it came from out in our area. And they don't know whose it is or the exact location, but the widows brought that back, see, from Fort Abraham Lincoln. All the wives were there waiting for the return of Custer and them, and you know, it didn't happen. So they took that back to Monroe. And so now it's on loan at the Timberlake and Area Museum in South Dakota, which kind of straddles, it's right between the Cheyenne River and Standing Rock. I have it on loan there, but sometime maybe I'll bring it over here if you'd like to see it, and other things too. And I actually spoke here before. It's been quite a while, but I was with the American Indian Studies program, and I did a program, and my son actually closed the whole evening with a concert, music. Let's see, Judith was her first name. Is that correct? Okay, yeah, it's been a while. This is a great hunting grounds area. So with that bow and all that, that was a really, you know, nice gesture. And, you know, I'd like to see anything change like that of street names, the Custer Street. Do it because it's the 150th anniversary, you know, of the Little Bighorn battle. And there's going to be celebrations all over. I've involved in a couple of them, and I can tell there's big planning for Wyoming. And Sheridan is going to be one of the bases for all these national organizations, and they're going to converge there on the hotels they have, and have programs and bus trips into there. And you know, we have pretty wide open country around here, but it doesn't stop us from long trips. I was with the the Oregon California Trails Association. Just a few years ago, we had our national conference in Casper, and they took bus tours from there. And mine was over clear from Casper over to KC, over to the old Fort Reno. And then from there, we went to Fetterman, the Fort Phil Kearny story. And then we went to the Wagon Box and we seen that. And we were heading back. Bus broke down. That's quite a ways to Casper. And everybody's, you know, doing this stuff, and these aren't working right, you know. And here I am. I thumbed a ride right on that old highway. And next thing, I was sitting down in the BLM office in Buffalo. I got some friends down there that I work with, and a lot of archaeology and sites. And so I'm really interested in archaeology too. Spencer, the director with archaeology, we just did a television program over at the Vor Buffalo Jump recently, and that's going to be aired, I think, next spring, Wyoming Humanities. And then, of course, everybody knows I'm on History Channel and stuff like that, C-SPAN. They do reruns of that too. But one of the street names, in this case, Rapid City, was the word squaw. People lived on squaw. So I see that all over in the West, you know, Squaw Valley, you know, I mean, everywhere. And that's one for our women. That's one of the most derogatory words to use, you know, and some of the definitions refer to the woman as just a reproductive item, you know, and even like the genital part itself, calling somebody that. And in our world where I come from on the reservation, that though they fight you. The women will fight you for that. So that's how serious some of these are, you know, some of these words. But anyway, we changed that. And I think, I can't remember, we proposed Wea, which is a Lakota word for woman. And then there was another street that we had, it's called Redskin. And this came before me. I was a chairman, elected chairman for 10 years. It's called the Rapid City Indian White Relations. And it's was under the city. And I was under several mayors. Look back to the last term of Lark LaCroix. His went clear into the 60s before I was around there. But I did in the 70s, and then the next two mayors I was in there. But I served there. I took the job in Iowa, and so I was doing the Lion Iowick thing, and it's part of the work of making it, you know, attractive for your students and all that. But they called me back to Rapid City. They said, we want to have you come back on a certain day. And anyway, they called me back and they proclaimed Donovin Sprague Day on March 23rd. Is Donovin Sprague Day in the city of Rapid City for my work in American Indian relations, Indian white relations, and going out and talking to non-native people. These street names, they were all non-native people that lived there. And in the case like with Redskin, you know, you always go out and, well, I wonder what the other streets are. So lo and behold, they were all football names, like maybe you might guess. And only one person during that time period objected, and he was a football fan. So he said that's the only reason. So in that case, we hope to have a nice native name in our group, but then I go out and it's all football names. So they said they would change it right away, but it had to be a football name. So we let the people decide, and it actually became Cowboy. So it went from a Indian to a cowboy. But anyway, Dallas Cowboys, you know, whoopee for all the Dallas Cowboy fans. So those, I just went out and did interviews with each household. And in both cases, people were ashamed to put their return address, you know, like squaw and stuff like that. They said, I hate it, you know, and what can we do? And so we did it in those cases. The ones that were really hard to change, again, were mascots. There were a couple school mascots, and they dug in. They were called, well, I don't like to say who they were really, but I'll just tell you some things that happened. Their name was not offensive, kind of like that brave thing, but it's what they did with it. So what they did, they had a homecoming each year during football, and they crowned a big chief. And these were all non-native people. A big ridiculous chief with a big nose and painted, and then some kind of a princess that went with that, which was really ridiculous. And anyway, I was in Iowa then, and I got called into that school that summer, and me and the principal, we looked at the video of it, and he said, now what could be wrong with this? Are the feathers not up to speed? Because I can go down to Kmart and get some different feathers. And, you know, he never got it. And he became a high level education administrator in the state. But anyway, they dug in, and media, again, I said, only this time it was their side, not my Indian radio. But anyway, I was on the town's radio station there, and they said, okay, this we're gonna open it up to callers after we had our discussion, and keep this to the mascot issue with the, so okay, phones light up, you know, first caller. Isn't it true that Indians don't pay taxes? That's the first question. Okay, let's get back to the topic. Next one comes in. Why don't you just go back to the reservation or wherever you came from, you know? And some people said I had a gem of a tape there, you know, historic, you know. And one day they just changed it on their own. We held a lot of meetings, always in opposition. But I thought we were making some headway. One day I just heard it on the radio in the summer. I was off work and the school has decided, no comments, but they have decided to end that homecoming, you know, activities that they do. And so about run off the road right then. Heard that, but yeah, so you know, you have to kind of weather the storm, and there's been a lot of times when it was difficult to do that and still be diplomatic and still, you know, try to work with people. And just like I said, you keep working at something, well, pretty soon, yeah, they got it. 50% American Indians are veterans of US wars. And so from there, I guess I would like to have some of the committee or people share some of their input too on the status maybe of where you are, you know, with proposal to make a change, like meeting with people. Would you like to add something?
Well, we're not really to that point yet.
Okay.
We've been in more of a micro.
Yeah, so the Zoom people can.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Maybe. Oh, there's the green, yeah. No, we're not really to a point yet for the actual talking to government
Okay.
folks yet.
Okay.
We've been working with mostly just doing education,
Mhm.
trying to get people to understand why we need to change.
I see.
And then it can become more of an organic kind of thing.
Informative and
Yeah, that's been,
go together.
yeah, that's been more of the
Yeah, that's
the way
good. That's a
that we've
really
been
good
working on.
approach. Glad
So,
to hear that.
well, rather than trying to force people,
Yeah.
make them understand and get uncomfortable enough
Yeah.
with it all to go, you know, yeah, I don't
Yeah.
like that being that way. So,
And that group that I was with, the Indian White Relations, was formed, you know, way before I started, but it was actually formed when the American Indian movement trials were going on in Rapid City and Black Hills, and there were riots, and the Wounded Knee occupation took place, and you know, that's how that committee formed. Not lawmaking at all. The discussion, dialogue, that's all it was. There was no, under the mayor's office, you know, and this is the rules and that. It was grassroots, but we had people who could make change. Okay, we established a different committees. So we had law enforcement, we had the sheriff's office represented, we had the city of police represented. We had some FBI actually, and we had judges. We had a Seventh Circuit Court judge who came in every time. We had the media. It's very important, the media rep. And there were a lot of stories like negative, you know, and our community has had a history of a lot of problems through the years because of its large Native population and that interaction. But anyway, when those articles would appear real negative, okay, right there, we addressed it at our monthly meeting, and we've got our media piece person right there. They go right back and they change. We had representatives from the health, from regional health, and We had arts and crafts. We had we really had a grassroots people there as well, you know, that came from Lakota homes and activists, real activists, you know, and so anyway, one time they made a mistake, the city, for our organization. They put my home number as the contact. So I was getting calls 24 hours a day. I had keys to the food bank, and people come into the city needing a bed. So you can imagine phone ringing off the hook there. But it was very worthwhile. And I like to do things that can see, make a difference and help. You know, Sioux too, that's a different word. It said Lakota, Dakota, Nakota. Nadawa Sioux is a word from the Ojibwe or Anishinaabe in the Great Lakes. And at that time, we were in that area, and we were the little bad snakes, the small snakes. That's what that means, is snake, enemy, foe, little snakes. The big snakes were on their east, was the Iroquois Nation. So, you know, you can see there's people that they'll say, what? You trying to change the name Sioux? That's traditional. No, it's not. Over in that same area, I used the example, the Winnebago, you know, there's still Winnebago. I went through Wisconsin this summer, and I know people over there. And then some decided to move at a certain point to Nebraska. So we have the Winnebago tribe over there. But you talk to traditionalists and say, oh, are you Winnebago? And they might look at you for quite a while, and they'll say, Ho-Chunk, I'm Ho-Chunk. The Ojibwe like to make these names, and Winnebago means people of the filthy waters. So they had real nice names for the neighboring tribes. So, you know, and then there's these names like in Iowa, across the tribal headquarters, the Sac and Fox of the Mississippi Band of Iowa Indians, better known as the Meskwaki. Government didn't know there's Sac and Fox, and they were the Fox who came back from Oklahoma, and they used to go to the back home. Like tonight, they'll all say, well, we're going back to settlement tonight. And I was always thinking, settlement, you know, I'm going to their reservation. That's what it's called. It's the only place I know that got that name, because they made a deal with the Iowa governor at that time. So it bypassed the feds. And that's how they're at Tama, Oklahoma, or excuse me, Tama, Iowa now. And a lot of, you know, changes like that people don't realize. And the Mandan, Rickrah, and Hidatsa we were just talking about earlier today, Lewis and Clark expedition. And if this would have went further back, Lewis and Clark met our family at Fort Pierre at the Missouri River. They keep journals. Our names are in there. Black Buffalo, our great, my four greats, grandfather. And then George Catlin comes along. He's keeping a journal, artist. He drew our family, and he kept a journal and detailed all of that information, you know. But that's how we go back. But now today, the Mandan, Rickrah, Hidatsa, they brought smallpox to them. Numbers were very reduced, very few Hidatsa speakers, and Rickrah are now moved into North Dakota, where, you know, they frequented the Missouri and South Dakota side, North Dakota, and now they're called the three affiliated tribes. You know, I have a hard time with that. I teach my students, I try to say with the Lakota Nation and the reservations, and I'll say, so what do you know which Lakota band you're from? And they'll say Eagle Butte. And Eagle Butte is our tribal headquarters. So yeah, they're working that way. But then with four bands, they're cross, you know, intermarriage too. But Dakota's known for the Arikara, large numbers of Arikara, the earth lodges and Lewis and Clark, you know, up there, same place where Custer ended up, and by south of Mandan by that Fort Abraham Lincoln. Befriended them, spent the winter with the Mandans, and then our conversation came up with Sacagawea, or if you're North Dakota, Sakakawea, correct you. But anyway, they got their guide and went on. And so that were part, you know, of this area. And even though our 9 reservations were moved, set up in the Dakotas, there's a whole history of this. And think back to the time when those 3 forts went, and we had a lot of this territory right up to the mountains here. And this area was a great hunting area as well. Hunting and a lot of intertribal peace camps, trading, and then we got a lot of the fur trade also mixing in with that. Some of that coming out of Fort Collins, at least for our region, like the Antone Janice groups from Fort Collins area was a real pocket of, and then Hispanic as well. They have to feed all these, our people in the Dakotas and Wind River. They're now dependent upon the government for food. And so the beef come in, herders, mass. It starts the cattle industry, and beef issue day was, I heard a good story on that one recently. Beef issue day, you got your beef came in first of the month. Now it's commodity day, first of the month, everybody's smiling. And that cheese is really good. USDA cheese. Everybody talks about that, but then there's a lot of other stuff too in there. And I told him, oh, I never did get used to those powdered eggs. And then this other guy, friend that I work with, we do presentations. He said, oh, well, we took that dried milk, all those boxes they accumulate, you get a lot of that kind of stuff. And they use that to mark their baseball field. Yeah. So we were useful, we had resourceful, you know. And even in our society, you know, we had plural wives was a common thing, multiple wives. Like there were Hump had 4, and those were 2 sisters, but they had a role, and the women had a voice. In our society, it looks like the woman doesn't have much voice. They're men's council tonight. What are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about a name change tonight. So, well, the woman says, now you better bring this up too, because it's of a concern to us women. And then if they don't bring that up, then there's action right away. Man comes home, woman owns a teepee and everything in it. So man comes home and all his belongings are on the outside. So that's not a good sign. Still today, you come home, everything's on the outside. But anyway, I really love being in this whole land, and the whole land is important to me, and the mountains and the rivers and connections, it's all connected. And I like to stand on the places where things happen. And a lot of times we're driving along the burials or certain areas, and I'm looking over and losing concentration, you know. And you know, there's we have the stories, of course, over at Bear Lodge. Anybody been to the Bear Lodge? Better known as Devil's Tower. So our White Bull, again, as a winter count there, spent the whole winter, you know, in that one year, right there with that visitor center you paid to go into all these places now. But the story over there, a lot of bears naturally in that area, and so thus Bear Lodge. And then you probably seen the stories or drawings with a big bear hanging on the side, you know, shaping all that. So the children had got away from the camp, and a bear started chasing them. They fell down, prayed to this rock, and the rock sprang up. So we have all these creation stories of our people and places, carried them to safety, and Great Eagle brings them down later. The bear claws, the shape of all that. But see, the main theme of that is they knew the ground rose. So see, then geologists study these things, and they find that there's been transformation. So I told my students, like Mount St. Helens eruption, you know, I remember I was in Black Hills State, and we had soot on our vehicles, you know, from that carried over that far. So that I went there on the Columbia River, and it's totally transformed that area. Those farms, places, and people who lived there. And so that's just an example in modern history of the transformation, you know, that takes place. Plus, our pipe come from over there, Bear Lodge area, and we have a lot of burials over there too. I didn't show a winter count, but I don't know if there's one in this one, but Hump is in the winter count. The first Hump for 1870 killed in the Wind River Mountains over here, and he was brought back, you know, from over there to the Bear Lodge. But of course, Ira Hayes, veteran, World War II, raising the flag at Iwo Jima, and Jim Thorpe, decathlon, Olympic athlete. I was just with this guy about a month ago. Billy Mills won a gold medal in the 10,000 meter run at Tokyo, and he's got books, real inspirational, and a movie, you know, an old one, Running Brave, I think it was. So he talks about how the disadvantages he had, the poor areas, Pine Ridge, and he run under the Marines, and he was not even expected to place in this race, and how he gets boxed around during the race. That's about at 2 miles, you know, 10,000 meter, and he's way behind. And so he closed his eyes, and there's his latest book, thinking about the eagle and his people and culture. But anyway, he run probably about the last 200 yards like a dash, just come in and smoked everybody, you know. Gold medal right there, first place. And he's a successful businessman today in LA, and I know he would come out here. You know, I had Vine Deloria Jr. in my classes, and people said, well, some of the other departments, where do you get the budget for that stuff, you know? And I said, well, he just called me up, said he was in town, and said, come on over. Same thing with at Sheridan College with Ben Nighthorse Campbell. Had him come in and talk. And Cheyenne, senator, eight years he was senator in Colorado, and author also, veteran. So I went to Germany, to the Army bases there, and presented a lot of this here. Here's the award winning up at the Little Bighorn by Colleen Cutshaw. The design, this is the Indian memorial added at the time of the name change to reflect both cultures. We've seen that one, that's from the museum. That's the bow given to me by the Custers here. And an ash bow, and then the whole story, their names are on that. But they said it belonged with us. So here's the Touch the Cloud over at Edmond, Oklahoma, University of Central Oklahoma. So these are some of the native students who brought me in. I was a speaker, and then this is our guy way down there. Pretty nice work there. Here's some more detail. And there's the Touch the Clouds, the red clouds. but I wanted to show you some of those contributions as well. So, any questions that I could answer? Or any other?
We also have some folks on Zoom, so I don't know if there are
Okay.
questions there, but if folks have questions here, love to pass the mic along to you.
You mentioned the widows, the U.S. soldier officers' widows. Professor Means at the last talk mentioned that Custer's widow wrote a book and then went on a nationwide book tour
Yeah, Libby
to create this
image.
image of Custer's last stand, and that became an image on beer signs, and
Yeah.
it became a. I went and looked. The time she went on that tour coincides with the time when our city, on its maps, started to write Custer on that street.
Yeah.
And I wondered if you could, if you have any thoughts on that what movement to rehabilitate his image or to change the narrative.
Yeah, well, I see that all the time, and you know, of course, there's a book that comes out on him or the battle about every year. It's a really important, or historically, as far as interest, and you know whether how accurate some of them are. I've reviewed some from the New York Times, you know, and I gave them a decent review, okay, but they don't know what happened over there where we're at on that side, you know, and he's always the last one to go down on all the fighting and the drawings, those like Budweiser promotions signs. Where I grew up and on the reservation, there was a little pool hall. That's where I spent most of my early life in there. But right over above the pool table was one of the famous Budweiser signs, you know, and he's always the last one to go down. And he was actually one of the much earlier from our family history. And when he went down from the hill, and they also were over to where the visitor center is today. And some of the Cheyennes and them told, I think maybe Crow too, said they were down there, and people said, no, don't listen to that. That was before the fire of 83 or whatever, when archaeologist Fox kind of rewrote some of that history based on archaeology and shell casings. And yeah, they proved that, yeah, they were down there. Those elders knew what they were talking about. But I know from our family, he took one shot, and it matches the forensics thing too, I think, and in the midsection, and then he was assisted, slumped over, and people came in on each side, and then he had assistance and help up to the hill, and was just propped up basically there, and then took another one, you know, during the firing. But yeah, a lot of stuff that just isn't accurate. There, you could get some books called the Custer Myth and stuff like that, you know, that's just full of that. There is one that done back in the day, and of course he's the last one. He's got the long, you know, locks, hair. They had fresh, short haircuts before when they left Fort Abraham Lincoln. So none of that. And sabers, most all the sabers were left back. Hardly any sabers. And then yeah, last to go down. And but there is one that has him, he's among the last. And I had seen that picture too a lot of times. But what I didn't realize when I was a kid, all the people in this one painting were actually real people, all right up on him on horseback. And who are those people? Are Hump and Crazy Horse and Gall and those picture names, Rain in the Face. And he interviewed them over at Standing Rock about the Last Stand Hill. But anyway, I thought all of them were kind of like, eh. But there was some effort done there to do some accuracy. So we kind of live with that, you know, I mean, that kind of stuff, you know.
We do have a question for Zoom, so if you don't mind, I don't know if anybody, other folks have questions.
Just a follow-up to the same.
Thank you, first of all, for your presentation. It's really interesting. But
Thank
in
you.
follow-up about this mythology, what's your sense of what the story and stories will be in this next anniversary year? And how does that play out?
Well, personally, one of my great hopes that I've worked for 20 years on is my unpublished manuscript. And so it's been done for 5 years. And I went through the university presses, and they were very interested. Even some of them already knew about the manuscript. And I didn't have to do any the online submission studies. Well, we'll just take it, you know. But it was so big, you know. My small books at one time it was 1,000 pages, which is 2 books. So it's manageable now, though. It's right at 500 or less, and it's a whole history from our family, you know, for some of the first families that have told about what happened, and it's full of this stuff about a little bit of what I share, and a whole bunch that's in there, you know, that's not been ever told. And my sources are the winter counts, which go back to the 1600s. And then a lot of our tribal people are gone just since I've been working on this, that reached 100 years old. One of them that was, I thought she was in here, but is Marcella LeBeau from our tribe. I think she was 102 or 3. World War II veteran. She passed recently in the last few years. And they just named a school in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, an elementary school. And I was down there. I was hoping to get over to the school, but I never made it. But the other people I interviewed was the oldest descendant from Touch the Cloud, my uncle, Grover Scott. So he was going to have his 100th birthday, and he got sick. They took him up to Rapid City Regional, or from our reservation. That's 150 miles. And I went up there to see him, and then last time I went up there, some family was there, and they were kind of shaking their head. They said, they don't look good, you know. And so what happened was he seen Hump, Crazy Horse, and his grandfather Touch the Cloud at the foot of his bed. And so that night he was gone. He passed. So just missed his 100th birthday. And so in my book there, I've got another man, I think Gus Kingman was 104. So that's really helpful when you can talk to somebody that's got excellent memory and 100 years old, you know. And so we're writing this stuff down. I'm an archivist with the tribe, and do a lot of work, you know, there to preserve stuff, because a lot of these stories are out there and they haven't been collected. So I have some people on interviews and tape, and they said in Grover, I went to a real rural area, and before I went out there, they said, well, he won't let anybody record him. And I just asked him, and he said, why, sure. So go figure.
We do have a couple of questions.
Okay.
From Zoom, if you don't mind.
Sure.
One question was Custer ever in Laramie at Fort Sanders? And I think that part of a follow-up question that I'll add, so I'll editorialize this, is the question of where do some of these names come from, right? Because presumably many of the people, Harney, Custer, didn't spend time or significant time in Laramie. And so what does that say in terms of naming streets after people who are not locally significant?
Well, I would encourage you all, just when you go back, to Google some bigger towns in Wyoming, and you can do Sheridan or Buffalo. It's the same names. I travel in them. It's the same. When you're going to see the Harney, the Sherman, the Sheridan, the Crook and Custer, and and all those, you know. And so why not have some of the other side reflected, you know?
What was
The
that?
native side incorporate. If you Google this also, Wyoming statehood, they were going to name, it gives the names. One was, they're going to call it Sioux, that hated foe, snake, or enemy. But I think Shoshone was a proposed name for the state of Wyoming. Check that out. There's 6 or 7 Indian names that were being proposed. Another program I've given in Wyoming that's not well known is the Ute story of 1906, 1908, when they left their reservation, Fort Duchesne, and they traveled out, story all across Wyoming. Collier's magazine sent a photographer out, and back in the day found them north of Gillette. And I've got newspapers from Rollins and Rock Springs and pictures of them coming through Main Street. But you ask people about it, I never heard about that, you know. And the governor at that time, Governor Bryant, in 1906, he called it the most important event during his term as governor of Wyoming, the Utes. And it's like, what? I know there's Wind River here, because see, that's a state thing, but just like in the Black Hills in South Dakota, what about the Kiowa? Kiowa had a big history in the Black Hills and Wyoming, and the Bear Lodge and Bear Butte, and the Mandan, Rickrod, and Hidatsa. So you can't always figure, you know, and then from there, you know, you get state parks and state visitor centers. Okay, what do we promote? Okay, well, what of our tribes here? Okay. But so there's a lot of gaps there that need to fill in.
I'm kind of curious about that, because there is a new-ish neighborhood that's called Indian Hills, in which they have a number of street names
Yeah.
named after indigenous tribes. So I'm kind of curious in terms of that other perspective, that
Yeah.
other side of it. Is it significant, or is it something that should be connected more with certain groups of people, right?
Well,
Just
yeah.
naming a place after groups of people.
I think again, everybody's doing the right thing by having discussion and decisions made in that by the people that come out, because we had people that didn't come out, but they said, we support you. We're not there, but you know, we can't come out. And I had people say, you know, you presented a rich history there, you know, and as you're in higher education and classified as an elder, if you disagree with this, that's enough. If it comes from a Lakota and they don't like Custer Street, then that was enough for a lot of those people. You know, where else do you go with that? You know,
Other folks have questions?
I didn't finish up the book part either after the university press stuff. From there, of course, I definitely had to shorten and stuff like that, and the whole thing with the winter counts, explaining sources. But it's all in a university press format. It's left like that. So that's the academic side of me, and then you get the American Indian part in there as well, with the interviews and all of that. So really all I'm looking for, and hey, I'm down here where I could put the word out. I'm looking for just a publisher. I don't need a university press. Somebody told me a long time ago at the State Historical Society, I won't say which state, and they said, Donovan, I was going to do that state pressing, and you know, I figured I wouldn't live long enough before they got around to it. So hey, I have some, hopefully some help from my tribe I hope to get, and been saving for the last 5 years since I kind of ditched the university and so press. So, hey, and I've heard it all to press, make one your own, and they're not doing big volumes of books anymore. Like when I started with mine, they're printing, as they need them. So I know all the marketing part. I've been an author, but each book has a different format, and my publishers, this doesn't fit. A 500-page book does not fit in their format, So if anybody knows some publishers, hey,
Good.
really, my plan was hope to get it out before the anniversary next year. That was yeah.
Got another question, kind of like the strategic element in terms of approaching the process of changing names. So you mentioned that you went door to door and did interviews,
Yeah.
right? So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that and why you found that to be effective, what type of conversations that you had during that process.
Yeah, it started with the city and then also the city planning department. And this was a large city. This was Rapid City. So they had a list of suggested questions as well. And then our group, like all of you, what are some things that we would like to address out there, if any, or brochures? Can we leave a brochure with you? Who we are, what we're trying to do, any of that kind of like, promotion, and then just going inside the house, and everybody was supportive. I never had, nobody kicked me out. So that's a good thing. I used to work in the elementary schools as a resource facilitator for the Native students. I'd go out to a highly populated Native area called Lakota Homes, all Native, and Johnny, say, from out there wouldn't come to school, grade school, and principal, he said, well, I go out there, I knock on the door, and he said, I know they're in there because there's a stove and there's a reflection, and they kind of walk around a little bit and hold Johnny, don't let him know we're in here. And then he goes back. So Donovan, can you go out? And next thing I knock on the door, come on in, we're having breakfast. I'm in there having a donut with them. But it's communication, and it's making people comfortable with you, and I think those are skills that, and I've seen some of those with the group since the time that I've been in touch with the group here, that they exhibit a lot of those traits and characteristics of empathy and care and change. Change is inevitable, it's like our most predictable things.
Maybe time for one more question.
I figured there'd be somebody from Monroe, Michigan here, yeah, clenched fist. Well, I know when I was over there, the neighboring Toledo Blade newspaper came over and interviewed me, and they have a really unique bridge over there at Toledo, architecturally. And the mayor made a special proclamation, and they really liked the native culture and connecting with them, that history, because it is quite a ways over there to Michigan. I actually go every summer to the South Bend area. Culver's a military academy, and I work with youth over there in the summer and all American Indian culture, and meet with the state. Where's our tribes? Where'd they go? Well, they have the treaties too. Same thing, Treaty of Greenville, and There's Sac and Fox and Potawatomi and Delaware and Piankashaw. And it's the Removal Act, Indian Removal Act, 1830. So they get that whole story. And they've started doing things with those names, like having a ride to commemorate, because they had a forced, kind of like every tribe had a Trail of Tears, but it's always associated with the Cherokee because they're a larger number. They had a Trail of Tears. Used to call it the Trail of Death, and now we call it the Trail of Courage to fit more, not to sugarcoat, but to for classrooms, all ages. And the whole Battle of Tippecanoe is part of that, and Tecumseh, and they'll say, like, who's Sitting Bull? Who's Crazy Horse? We know who Tecumseh is, it's where you're at, what area. So it's a really good place to teach American Indian culture. When I first went there, these are changes here. I'm just thinking, I was called over there for change by an alumni, and he didn't want anybody to know that he wanted change, I guess. So he paid my way over there from the Black Hills. And before I left, I said, what do you want me to do? You're hiring me to do this. He said, Donovan, when you get over there, you'll see what needs to happen. I had no idea. So I come into the whole camp. First thing I see is a huge totem pole, and people are stopping and taking pictures. And gosh, I didn't know the tribes in this area had totem poles. And then each lodge had totem poles everywhere. And that started back in the day, 1930s or something. Somebody donated a totem pole. And see, that's a Northwest Coast thing. And then that's how that caught on. So now we have one old totem pole, just historical like, but I got a beautiful birch bark canoe at the entrance to reflect. That was their travel. That canoe is about from here to that wall. It's the entrance into the camp culvert. And a lot of people that could make things happen there. One of our buildings is the George Steinbrenner building. One of the students. Walter O'Malley, owner of the Dodgers, is there. I know John Denver's kids came there in camp, and John Mellencamp, he's Indiana. So it's resources, and they just scraped me up from somewhere. I don't know how I even got there, and like it started with, you'll see what's needed. And after that first year, that led to an annual thing where I'm expected to go there and teach the kids arts and crafts. And we got the second largest lake in Indiana right on the campus grounds, Lake Maxinkuki. And then right on each side of me, and in this direction is Purdue, is Lafayette, and over here is Notre Dame at South Bend. And they Notre Dame, they practice at the culvert fields there. They put their blinds up and tents so you can't see what plays they're working on. But it's really good to interact with people. And I felt really honored that you called me, because it reminded me of something like that, or it reminded me of, we talked on the phone, of believing in something, just like that 50% are veterans, and that's commitment, and be a believer